For the past week and a half, Azerbaijan has started an aggressive attack on Artsakh, this time aided by Turkey overtly and unequivocally. Ankara has been providing Syrian jihadists to fight on the side of the Azerbaijani forces. As we're recording this interview, 350 Armenian soldiers have died. There's civilian casualties and the destruction is mounting. To talk about the US position on this matter and how we can move forward to bring peace to the region, I'm being joined today by Congressman Adam Schiff. Congressman, welcome. You're on mute.
Thank you, Ara. It's good to be with you.
So, Congressman, you've been in Congress now for 20 years, and you have been on the right side of this issue, and you have also spearheaded efforts to recognize the self-determination of Artsakh, put in certain mechanisms to monitor the situation on the border. How are you feeling, having witnessed what's been going on for the last week and a half in the region?
Well, I'm horrified by it, and this is what many of us have been warning about for years now, as we saw increasing provocations from Azerbaijan, as Aliyev's domestic problems increased, and he was looking to distract attention from his poor handling of his own economy and governance. And what concerned me, because Ari, you and I have talked about this many times, is the U.S. response when there would be hostilities along the line of contact was merely to call on both sides to refrain from violence. That kind of false equivalency was an encouragement to Azerbaijan. And we said this repeatedly each time there would be acts of provocation. When you have an aggressor and other powers merely call on both sides to engage in responsible conduct, it's an encouragement to the aggressor. Because they know they won't be held accountable. And the danger was exactly what we're seeing, that this would burst out into all-out warfare. And rather than being a constructive actor, Turkey is adding fuel to the fire. Turkey is bringing in foreign fighters from Syria to do its dirty work. And Azerbaijan is shelling civilian areas. And the US leadership is just not there to call out Azerbaijan, to call out to Turkey and Erdogan, to get them to back off. We are trying in the Congress. Jackie Spear introduced a resolution that I'm the co-lead on, calling on Azerbaijan to cease its belligerence and hostilities, calling on Turkey to back off and stop adding to the conflict. That's the position not only the Congress should have on a bipartisan basis, and I think does, but the position we need the administration to take.
You also co-authored a letter along with other congressional leaders to urging Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to impose sanctions on Turkey, as well as halt military assistance to Azerbaijan. How do you think that's going to play out in the State Department?
Well, I wrote this letter, and we now have 50 bipartisan authors on it. To urge the State Department, get off the sidelines. Make your voice count right now. You need to push back, particularly against Turkey, because I don't know that Azerbaijan would be doing all this without Turkish aid and provocation. Turkey is the one saying, no, don't cease fire. And why is it that, the strongest international voice appears to be Macron of France? It should be the President of the United States. It should be our Secretary of State. But they appear to be missing in action in terms of advocacy for our Armenian ally and for peace. In terms of what reaction these efforts in Congress will have from the administration, I hope they bear fruit. I hope the administration sees where Congress is on a bipartisan basis. Earlier, I guess it was late last year, we passed the Armenian genocide resolution on an overwhelming bipartisan basis. That should have sent a message to the administration about what the US Congress believes on a bipartisan basis should be our policy vis-a-vis Turkey and genocide and Azerbaijan and human rights violations. But you know, now with the drafting of these foreign fighters, it's all the more urgent, given the danger of this spilling out into a much wider regional conflict. And of course, where do those foreign fighters go after they leave Azerbaijan and Armenia and Artsakh soil?
Last week, the French President Macron was the one who alerted the world about the fighting of jihadists in Artsakh alongside Azerbaijani forces. Soon after, a Pentagon official was quoted as corroborating that information. And just yesterday, the Russian intelligence chief also addressed this issue. So if the three OSCE co-chairing countries are pointing to this situation, which all of them witnessed, in fact, a year ago around this time when Turkey essentially took over northern Syria. Why is the international response to this particular what I'm going to call war has been so slow? We've seen the 2016 war where it lasted 4 days. In July, the flare-ups were contained to 2 days. We have been fighting for 12 days right now, and the casualties are mounting. Why do you think there is reticence for the international community to get involved?
You know, to me, it's inexplicable. I can't understand why, given everything that's at risk. I have to think that you know, some in the international community aren't willing to stand up to Turkey. But look, Turkey, this isn't the first or second or third bad act by Turkey. They have long taken action now inconsistent with their NATO obligations. They have been sidling up to Iran. They've been buying air defense systems from Russia that are incompatible with NATO. They took action in Syria that endangered the lives of American troops. What is it going to take for our president to say enough is enough and back off? And you know, other nations they're looking to us to show leadership. And maybe part of their reticence is they don't see the American president and administration taking action, so they're taking a signal from that silence or that indifference. So a very dangerous situation, and the loss of life is just going to continue until we get greater leadership from the international community.
Mm-hmm. The OSCE means
one other thing I wanted to mention,
sure.
Is you know, in terms of U.S.-Armenia relations and the importance of Armenia, a fellow democracy in the region of the United States, if we don't do more, it simply means Armenia is of necessity going to become more reliant on Russia. They won't have any choice. If we're not willing to help assure their security, then they will seek the help of strong powers that can. And so there's you know, aside from the compelling human rights issue, there's a geostrategic issue and interest the United States has in making sure that we support our allies.
Mm-hmm. The OSCE Minsk group announced today that they will be doing shuttle diplomacy once again, meeting with the Azerbaijani foreign minister tomorrow and the Armenian foreign minister on the 12th. What should be the focus of those meetings?
Well, I think there should be an immediate ceasefire and an insistence that they install ceasefire monitoring equipment along the line of contact. So that it can be easily demonstrated in the next provocation that Azerbaijan is responsible, and it will serve as a deterrent to Azerbaijan. Armenia has agreed to it, Artsakh has agreed to it. Of course, Azerbaijan, the belligerent, has not, and that ought to tell us something. But I think that ought to be the immediate priority, is end the conflict, install ceasefire monitoring equipment, get back to a peaceful dispute resolution process. There's just no alternative to that except more bloodshed.
We have seen photos and videos from the destruction that has been caused in Artsakh. It reminds me, it harkens back to the scenes that we saw almost 30 years ago when there was a full-blown war. And the human toll is much higher. The Armenian and Artsakh authorities are warning the world that there's another Armenian genocide on the way. How do we mitigate this disaster?
We have to put an end to the fighting, and we have to get Turkey to back off, and we need to get Azerbaijan to lay down arms and cease this murderous conduct. There's just no alternative, and every day that we delay means more lives lost. I mean, this is absolutely catastrophic, and the terrible tragedy is, I believe it was preventable. If the international community had shown greater resolution and insisted on monitors and ceasefire equipment, I think this could have been deterred. But the actions that we take now or don't take will not only prolong or end the conflict, but they will also have an impact on whether Azerbaijan and Turkey feel they can get away with this again.
And hopefully history will not repeat itself. When the July fighting occurred, when Azerbaijan attacked Armenia proper, some of that spilled into our community. We certainly saw the violence against Armenian demonstrators in Los Angeles, but San Francisco bore the brunt of that, with our school and community center vandalized, set ablaze, shot at. How do we address this type of spillover here in the United States? Not to mention that the Asbarez website has been the subject of a massive attack, a DDoS attack, for the past week and a half since the hostilities flared up. What do we do as Armenian Americans to address this aggression here in the United States?
Well, these are hate crimes, pure and simple, and I think that law enforcement needs to prosecute them to the full extent of the law, identify who the culprits are, and then I think it falls on all of us, not just the Armenian community, the entire community, to condemn these acts of hate, to make sure that they won't be tolerated, to speak loudly about it, to make sure that those that perpetrate these acts are just earning the condemnation of everyone. They're doing this, as an expression of their hatred against another people, and because they think that they can get away with it, because they hear dog whistles of racism and hate, and now think that's okay to do and act out on. And good people from every background need to be very vocal in condemning this, even while we seek to bring those responsible to justice.
And in addition to, you have seen the community come together. We're all united on this. Aside from doing the protests and coming together as a community to raise funds, much needed funds, because Armenia and Artsakh are going to be hit very badly economically, especially given the COVID crisis and the economic impact it's had. What can we as Armenian Americans do to advance this issue and to make it stop?
Well, I think being very vocal about it and bringing it to the attention of the press, of elected officials. So many Americans don't know anything about this part of the world, and they don't know how this conflict affects them until more nations get drawn into it, and it escalates, and then they find out, or foreign fighters that have been recruited by Turkey and their dirty work in the region, and then go elsewhere. And where do they go from there? So this is not a problem that can be contained. And even if it could be contained, we have a human rights interest in stopping the bloodshed and supporting our democratic allies. So I think raising the profile of this issue, making sure that there's a sense of urgency about it here in the United States, because people are losing their lives. I've got staff whose family members are being called up, and I see when I talk to members of the community just how desperate they are for help and an end to the fighting. So I don't know that I've seen any time in the more than 20 years I've had the privilege of representing the community where people have been more concerned. And, you know, we went through a war in Syria, and, you know, that still goes on, where there was also tremendous concern. But I would say the concern right now is the highest I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. And also, the media could do a much, much better job of covering this issue, because when Syria has been consistently in the headlines for the past 7 or 8 years, this is essentially the continuation of the same incursion and insurgence by Ankara, and it poses much greater security concerns for the entire world. Any final thoughts, Congressman Schiff?
All right, you know, just that I'm going to continue to do everything possible, and I'll be making an appearance on Saturday at the telethon. That's another way the community can support, you know, those that are on the front lines, and those that need help, medical help, and otherwise. But I understand just how urgent this situation is, and what is just so galling to me is that it was so eminently and tragically predictable. And the result of a policy of moral equivalence, where we were unwilling to call out the aggressor. So that has to come to an end. I'm, you know, glad to see there's bipartisan support to push back on this, and we just need to keep doing everything we can until the fighting stops.
Mm-hmm. And your efforts certainly could pave a way for some kind of a decisive action by the administration, and you at home can certainly be a part of it by taking part in the ANCA Action Alert, urging members of Congress to sign on to the letter as well as to co-sponsor the resolution. Congressman Schiff, as always, thank you. It has been a pleasure chatting with you, and thank you for your leadership on the right side of this issue.
Thank you, Ara. Be well, stay healthy.
Have a good day.
You too.